Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome back to my channel. I pray that you're all in the best of health and iman. If you are new, welcome. My name is Nafisa. I am a relationship and a trauma-informed coach. So if you like to be coached in those areas, you can find me over on my website, which I will leave linked in the description box down below. You can also find me on Patreon, where I teach women how to be feminine, how to cultivate femininity towards being a more feminine wife. So those of you who are wives or wives to be, you also want to cultivate your femininity, you can find me over on Patreon for content around that. But here on YouTube, I make relationship and Islamic advice videos. So if you're interested in that, then definitely make sure you subscribe. So in today's video, we're talking about the normalization of witchcraft through children's programs. This is a video that I've been wanting to make for such a long time, and alhamdulillah that I'm getting to it. The purpose of this video is just to bring a level of awareness for all of us, those of us who have nieces and nephews or work in environments where there are children, those of us who have children, just for us to be aware of how we can take one step further to protect our children, because they are the future generations, and we want to make sure that whatever difficulties we're facing now, we lessen it as much as possible for the next generation. And awareness is where it all begins. So I really wanted us to have a strong understanding of this, so that we do not trivialize the importance of the damage that some of these exposures can do to our young people. So without any further ado, let's begin today's video. So what is witchcraft? Well, Sheikh Google, as Mufti Menk used to call it, Google gave a definition of witchcraft, which is that it is the practice of magic for evil purposes. Okay, the use and practice of magic for evil purposes. In Islam, I want to make it clear, there is no such thing as good magic and bad magic in Islam. Anyone who engages in magic is one of the peoples whom Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that they have lost the hereafter. Whoever engages in magic has lost the hereafter, meaning there is no goodness waiting for them in the hereafter. And the hereafter is very clear. You're either going to heaven or you're going to hell. There is no in between. So if Allah says there is no good for those who practice magic, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not say those who practice good magic are okay. He says those who practice magic. So that is one of the stances that Islam has as far as magic is concerned. Also, I also want to add that, yes, as Muslims, we do believe that magic exists. So if you're a Muslim and you're like, oh no, these things are just not true, that doesn't exist, it does. Why? Because we know shaitan exists, and we also know magic exists, and we know how magic was introduced into the world. Magic is usually practiced through the use of spells, the use of paganistic worship, the use of idol worship, the utilizations of Allah's other creations. I don't want to mention names in case anyone is like scared. So people can use those different means to basically do evil to others and to influence others in ways that are non-tangible. Right? So non-tangible ways are more spiritualized ways. So where did magic come from? We know in Islam that magic was actually introduced by two angels who were sent as a test. The two angels who brought the knowledge of magic were called Harut and Marut. And it is said that the angels do not teach anybody their knowledge of magic, except that they say, we are sent as a trial. So do not disbelieve by practicing this knowledge that we share with you, by practicing the magic. So they do not teach the knowledge of magic, except that they give a warning that they are a test, they are a trial. So do not disbelieve by practicing this thing. If you practice this thing called magic, it is a form of disbelief. And when you disbelieve, you are no longer a Muslim, and thus you have no share in the hereafter. And so these angels gave the warnings. But of course, man continues to do that which they should not be doing. So yes, this was a so-called secretive knowledge that people then started to practice. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said that people practiced magic until they learned that which separates a family, which is one of Shaitan's biggest goals, is to separate a family. And so we have to, as Muslims, take seriously these issues, and not to think that just because the rest of the world is taking it as a laxed topic, that we too can just, oh, it's just fun. I also really wanted initially to make this video in October because I thought it would be very fitting for the whole practice of Halloween, and to give us Muslims the insight that we need to understand why Halloween it's not our practice, and why we should not allow our children to engage in anything that has any association to do with Halloween. So how is magic being infiltrated into children's programs? I think most of you by now have noticed that it is rare to see a children's program that doesn't have any form of magic or magicians or spells or a good witch. And this idea of magic is introduced through the use of imagination. They present it to children as it's something of fantasy. It's not real, it's just imagination. You have this magical being that can fly, that one that flies on brooms, and one that can do magical tricks. And we as regular people, we trivialize the importance of our imagination. Imagination is actually the beginning of a new reality. And what is presented to the children as just something of the imagination, some make-believe, is actually really, really real. A lot of the knowledge that the people who create these shows use to be able to create these shows actually come from them studying magic in and of itself, studying idol worship in and of itself, studying the worship of shaitan and things that are in alignment with that. They study that, and then they come to infiltrate it into films. The other day I was watching a documentary by a Nigerian documentary guy who does documentary videos. He's Nigerian, and he went to a different country to see how they practices of paganisms and idol worship and the practice of magic. One of the men who spoke in that documentary said that he was a researcher for a huge company here in the West who do children's programs. And he was saying that he gets inspiration from studying paganism, how magic is actually practiced by those who follow that way of life. He gets inspiration from that. He studies that, he gains the knowledge, and he comes and he infiltrates it into children's programs for our children to watch. And so this is by no means something to play around with, because if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that we should have no association with such a thing, and that way of practice has been sent down as a test, and whoever engages in it has no part in the hereafter. As Muslims, if we want to share in the hereafter, we must have nothing to do with such things. But I understand it's hard, because we live in the 21st century and we can't just ban our children from watching TV. Part of this video is really to inspire the next generation who want to take a step forward to create more halal content for our children so that they have options. We cannot be under some illusion that none of our kids will just watch TV and that's how we're just going to protect them and keep them in this bubble and they will never get exposed, because one way or another they will be exposed. So we want to limit that exposure as people who are in the lives of our children and in the lives of the children that we care for. But we also know that they may become exposed to it. So rather, how can we have halal alternatives to give to our children? So if there's anyone out there who is thinking in line of creating, Islamic content for children, I really encourage you to do so. I found a few on YouTube, but I must say the songs in there are quite strong. The music in there is still quite strong. But inshallah, we can find a way around that. And I really want to inspire those who are thinking along those lines to continue to do so, because there is a huge need for us to find forms of halal entertainment for our children that they can also watch on TV, but that is teaching them a good message and is coming through halal means. So how is this idea of practice of magic and witchcraft being normalized to children, and what impact is it having on our kids? First and foremost, it's exposing them to the teachings of evil very, very early. And yes, Witchcraft is an evil way. Magic is an evil way according to Islam. And so when our children get exposed to ideas about that early, number one, they become desensitized to the importance of it. Because again, it's presented as it's just fun. The number of people that have said that they are devout worshippers and you see them celebrating Halloween and they're just like, it's just a bit of fun. I don't know, like, what's your problem? It's just a bit of fun. As Muslims, we do have to read deeply into some things, and we have to understand that there is a fine line between what is fun and what is serious. And Islam defines for us what is fun and what is serious. And anything to do with the practice of magic is not. So when they make it seem as if it's something fun, it desensitizes our children. And by them also watching those things, what it does is that it allows those pieces of information to enter into our children's subconscious mind. The mind is in 3 levels: conscious, the subconscious, and the unconscious mind. When information goes into your subconscious mind, you may not be able to remember it initially, but it has already imprinted in your mind. It's there. And so by introducing things early to children whose minds are not yet developed, they are normalizing it in their minds already. And it is having some level of spiritual influence. Many of these programs, the things and the words that they use are not just some made up words. They are actually words of magic. Research some of the famous words of magic that you've heard in children's programs, and you will understand the roots and where it's actually coming from. And you will understand that they are not some made up word of gibberish that doesn't have any sense. They are real words that are used when doing spells. And then our children sit there and they watch it, and they are laughing with it, they're dancing with it, it's entering into their minds, so that when they grow up, when it comes to the practice of magic, it will not be anything of a big deal. So what they are doing to our children is infiltrating that idea early on, so that when they grow up, it's very easy for shaitan to have control over their minds. A lot of the illnesses that some kids are going through these days are spiritually based illnesses that there seems to be no explanation for. Why? Because of the things that our children are exposed to. Please, parents, try to make sure your children do not watch horror movies. Try to make sure your children do not watch these shows that are promoting magic as something positive. Like I said, in Islam, there is no positive magic. There is no, this magic is just to give me a good outcome. Any practice of magic is haram. If you want to live in this dunya as a Muslim and you want to die as a believer, we must leave alone everything that relates to magic. Another impact that these shows have on our children's minds is that they somehow become addicted to it. It then leads to this nostalgic feeling when they grow up. They tend to seek those things. Think of a very famous children's book series that turned into films that has a lot of magic in it. Don't want to mention its name because I don't want to give them more clout. But I remember being very young, and children my age will queue for hours just to go and buy this book on its release date. The book is this thick. This thick. Full of nothing but the practice of magic. Nothing but the practice of magic. And now those children who are adults, my generation, are still so attached to those things. They have to still watch the movies. They have to still read the books. They know the movies word for word. So essentially, they become hungry for that type of information. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala continues to say that wretched is that which they sold themselves for. Wretched is what they sold themselves for. Meaning those who sell themselves to the devil have sold themselves to such a negative outcome. They themselves don't even know what they've just signed up for. I'm not necessarily saying that if you watch these things, suddenly you're going to start practicing magic. But I'm saying that it's having an impact. It's having an imprint. It's desensitizing our children. And it's making our children yearn for these things long after they've grown up. And it's giving them ideas about these things so that when they grow up, they practice these things without any fear, without even feeling like there's anything wrong with it. Last but not least, I want to say that when it comes to what our children consume, you may have all the control in your home, but be mindful of the other environments that your children are in as well. If your children are in environments with people whom you know their faith is not on point, please be careful. We and our kids share a life with other people who don't share the same beliefs as us. That doesn't necessarily make them bad, but we must be aware of how others may also have an influences on our children. So it is our job to always make sure that our children are protected as much as we can. And I'm saying our children, you don't have to be a mother to want to protect a Muslim child from these things. Choose something that is neutral. There are shows about nature. There are Islamic cartoons nowadays, like I've said, and I'm really praying that there will be more and more of those, right? Sometimes just switch off all the TVs and iPads and just actually sit down and play with your children, right? Take them outside, make sure they're supervised, but take them outside, play, get active. Let them use their imagination in a way that is active rather than them sitting there and exposing their minds to shaitan to then control. So I really pray, my brothers and sisters, that this video has been of benefit. It is our job to be careful with these things. They do exist. They are not going anywhere. They're not going anywhere because they're so strongly infiltrated to almost every single area of life. But with Allah's help and with more knowledge and with the desire to want to protect, we can take a step forward towards protecting ourselves and our children. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect us from those who practice evil. May Allah also keep us away from the practice of evil. May Allah keep our faith in Him strong. May He protect us, protect all of the Muslims all over the world, those who are struggling in all the different challenges that they're going through. May Allah make it easy for them. May Allah relieve our burdens. And most importantly, may Allah help us to live as mu'mins and die as mu'mins so that we will enter into Jannatul Firdaus. Ameen. Jazakallahu khair for watching this video. If you have enjoyed it, please make sure you give it a thumbs up and I will see you in my next one. Assalamu alaikum.